Yay. Good morning, Yvonne.
Good morning. And it's
Good
an
morning
early
from
morning for us
sunrise time
today.
in Bali.
Yes, you are.
Yay. So great to be with you again.
Yes, wonderful. Always. And
mm,
I'm always intrigued as to what happens and where will we go.
where will we go? Yes. Staying with the mother in times of transition as we
Yes.
are part of her ascension process, as we are part of her consciousness evolution. And well, many of the people that will be listening to this are well aware that you have been writing steady for well over 400 days about the new earth.
Yep, 411 today, which I'm still waiting for that to come through, actually.
It is so amazing because
I know.
I've done these little episodes for myself where I have this fantasy like, oh, I'm going to commit myself to doing this for 3 weeks, or I'm going to do this for 15 days, and nah, don't not happening. And it is just so awe-inspiring to see the calm and the grace, but also really the commitment to showing up for that, because each of these posts about the new earth are of their own quality and caliber, and really their the intention within it is really to share more and more around what does it look like, what does it feel like, how can we imagine it, what is real about it, what are the considerations, and what is it not. And to me it's just been so inspiring to witness that just every day coming out. And your your team hasn't yet told you, all right, we're complete. And it is just amazing because it's not like you took a holiday in between.
No.
So there's something to say for that. That yeah, I really just want to acknowledge you for showing up for that. It's so profound, and of course that gets to be shared into the Brave New Life community on the community platform, and all the other groups that you are part of. They get to have an opportunity to just soak that in, just take that in, just sit with the beautiful quotes that come with it. And you haven't written anything for today yet.
No, because you have thrown my whole day out by suddenly telling me that, we needed to start what for me was 3 hours earlier for you
Yeah.
two.
Yes, the
But
sun is
it's
just
interesting,
rising.
because yesterday when I was writing day 410, I had a little discussion with, that which comes through. And I go, what's this about? I used to do a weekly video clip on my YouTube channel for quite some time. And
Hmm.
at the beginning of this, whatever one wants to name it, I was suddenly told, stop doing that. And I'm like, why? This is a good time, to be doing this. And they said, no, no more videos. Right. So yesterday I said, so what's that about? Everybody else got onto YouTube channels all of a sudden, and there are, everyone and his dog is talking about this. I'm not seeing, and you just want me to write. And they said, it's because people will listen to a video and it'll just disappear. But once you've written it, it's in form and it becomes physical.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that, and I went, oh, okay. But yeah, whatever it's for. And I have a feeling that also it's like at the moment I feel as if Mother Earth is speaking also through me. It wants to be heard. Wow,
Hmm.
I wasn't going to say that, but it's obviously wanting to be heard today. Yes, so Mother Earth wants it to be heard, wants us to get away from our. We talk a lot about our identity, that is really in the way. This self-identity of the persona as being the only thing that there is. And that really
Yeah.
comes from survival mindset. And where we're going in this time of transition, where the earth is moving to, if we don't connect with her energy and don't hear her, you know, hear her cry for seeing her, it's like, gosh, what they're saying is it's like the child. I do quite a bit of inner child work with people, and I did my own, obviously. So the inner child will continue to cry out to be heard if we do not do that healing. And what I'm feeling at the moment is that Mother Earth is that it's not a child, but it is the similar cry. It wants to be heard for being recognized as an entity of its own, its own energetic being, rather than just something we build houses on, something we dig into and plant seeds, even that, something that we go, make sandcastles. We do all those things on top of, but we don't, as a humanity, we have lost mostly. And this is why we're talking about the indigenous, because that when you're indigenous, you don't lose that connection to Mother Earth as a living entity. And I think that is really what we're going to be exploring a bit more today, obviously.
So good.
I love it. I just love it when I open my mouth and go, bleh.
So nice. Yes. Well, we are being asked to pay a lot of attention. And I'm almost like seeing it as, putting a little coin in a jar. Our attention coins are being asked to be paid into the coin of those that are also performing a function with purpose, that are causing great confusion, great distortion, and really great distraction. And it's almost like this massive pull of our foci outward to the world around. And as that happens, we are actually unconsciously dreaming a reality into being. And so it's like we're causing the biofeedback because we are the generators of the dream. And so our dreaming is becoming, because of our attention that we place on the events and circumstances that are orchestrated around us, we are being invited to really have a conscious choice. But for most people, with as much as we have related around the unresolved patterns within us that want to be freed, they are the ones that are being sort of kind of played into, and they will react towards what's happening outside of ourselves. And I see that it's not necessarily so simple or so easy when there's such a, well, how would I say it, huge theatrical production going on around that is having real life impact and real life ramifications around our freedom, around our sovereignty, around all of these subjects that we've covered in the previous conversations. What I see that it's doing and has done also for me is, we all know that from wherever we picked it up, is that where attention goes, energy flows. And I like to say that what I pay attention to, I become aware of. So if I pay attention to what's all going on that is wrong or not right or unjust or all of these things, that is becoming my awareness. And I'm actually watering with those thoughts my mind gardens. And I'm cultivating with that future scenarios in my dreaming that aren't necessarily of peace, transformation. They're more this kind of holding pattern of everything is pretty not working out, and we just got to kind of hold our breath and suck through a straw, and then things will get better. And then what I think the underlying concept has even for me been, well, and then things will get back to normal. And what I witnessed within that is that I've greatly forgotten for quite a few months because I got so entrenched in the doing, in the showing up, and in the raising the awareness, health sovereignty summits. There's been a lot that I've leaned my life force into, and I really forgot to connect with what is really going on, because the outward reality that we are perceiving and that we could pay attention to is just but one option of a story, and it's a man-made one. And it's a man-made one of a really poor production because there's no love in it. There's no peace in it. There's no harmony projected into it. It's the opposite of all of that. And I've recently really kind of apprehended my own mind and my own being in that. When they were deploying the military here in Bali to go and, do inspections, and I got imprinted with the stories of my grandparents of what happened during the Second World War. So all those narratives were active for me. And, Ausweisbitte and wo sind dein Papieren? And so that all came up for me. And it really brought me into this like freezing space. And then I asked myself, as I recognized that, because I have that self-reflective awareness a little bit, I'm like, so hang on, is this happening now? And where is this happening other than right here in my mind? And if I'm all about dreaming wisely, what am I dreaming into being right now other than getting pulled up by, a bunch of guys in uniforms that jump from behind a bush to grab me? And what am I leaning my dreaming into? And I sat with that and I was like, well, okay, hang on, let's look around. So I looked right at this. This is not a virtual background. Um, and I said, is this happening now? And that dissolved the story that I was paying attention to, but really that I was generating and cultivating, because I realized that this war that was going on in my mind, that it was really only going on here. I'm not dismissing that it's going on for other people, but in each moment, we as human beings do have a choice whether we go into fear or whether we go with love. And going with love seems to be a lot harder these days, but that is our nature. So it's the choice is to go into fear, out of love, into fear, or just be with love. And so I brought myself back and I realized that it's much more beneficial for my cells and for my beingness and how I can shine my light into this world to actually stay with the mother. And that's where it reminded me of the teachings that I received from my grandmothers, and also my direct communication with Mother Earth as a spirit, which I found tremendously exciting series of journeys of having to go on adventures and place crystals in places. And oh my God, she really pushed me to the edge of my comfortability while working and trying to get stuff done. And it wouldn't let me go at all, ever, until I would actually complete whatever I was asked to do. And so I come back to that this transition is happening, and I'm starting to get more open to really feeling into what is her dreaming, what is her song, and she wants to be heard. And that communication seems to be much more of a dreaming of transformation into a new frequency that I'm personally much more interested to lean into, because it actually cultivates joy and it cultivates new learning that is part of nature. I'd like to just invite you to just share from that place that has knowing of this, so that we can hear and receive that.
I was sitting here listening to you, and I was feeling so blessed and so privileged because of these daily downloads that I do every day. I'm automatically tuned in, and I know I told you right from the beginning that has always been, my way of being, that I tune in for work every morning, because this is my mission. My soul obviously knows much better how to run my life than I did, because I just seemed to make a mess of it. But, when I first had my time of awakening, so that's when I surrendered, and I went, well, I've run this truck into a ditch, so I think maybe, I'll get some driving lessons. So, but this the fact that every morning when I open myself up and this information comes through, because I don't have a personal agenda that is in the way, and I just allow it to come. So my cells are constantly adjusted and attuned to the information that comes through. And for me, that is the truth I live. And yesterday I was having lunch with one of my students, and I was talking about how I see the world outside as, oh, I remember that world, but it isn't my world. This is my world. My world is what comes through every day, and that shows me the truth, my truth, and it also keeps me connected to heaven and earth, so that I'm this conduit and listen. I hear the earth. I hear the mother wanting us to pay attention, to come not just back to knowing that who she is, but for us to remember who we are. And I was looking at people yesterday, and because I was out, I attempt, to not do that. I like to stay in my world a bit more, but there is an underlying anger that comes through people when they see you not complying, and I thought about that, and I know that anger is a messenger of control, so they can't control you, but it comes from their fear. And it also comes from a different place that I was alerted to yesterday. If you feel angry about what other people are doing, it is because you are not in alignment with your soul path. If you're making your choices from a heart-driven intention, then you're comfortable with your choices. Yeah. But if you're doing it out of fear, out of whatever anything other than the heart, you will have to defend it, right? And usually aggressively. So for me, everything outside of me is a sign. You talked about that. You're constantly being pulled back. You're being pulled back because you sign up for a mission that needs to be fulfilled. And at present, I feel that we're getting closer and closer to having, the big reveal. And so we're more and more needed every day. People seem to think that at my stage of life, I ought to be slowing down. Well, I tell you what, if I went any faster, I'd be meeting myself coming backwards. It is just not happening. I say, well, how much longer do I have to keep running? Well, you're only just begun. Thank you very much. And it excites me because that means that we are changing. And for anyone who wants to go back to normal, well, I'm afraid that's never that wasn't normal anyway. It was keeping us away from our indigenous self. It was keeping us away from us knowing who we are as a true spark of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And really our role is to get to know that inner self to the point where we can consciously put that in place. You know, everybody talks about the law of attraction, and you do this and you do that. It's all about do to get, because that is the old paradigm. But when you're tuned in with the mother, with heaven and earth, when you become an intrinsic part of that whole, you don't have those concerns, because this is an abundant universe. This is a multiverse of life in motion. We are the ones that put the blockages in place. We are the ones, through the stories and the programming and the conditioning, that have allowed ourselves to be diminished into something less than life. Because when we embrace life and allow it to flow freely through us, in alignment with the mother and the father, then everything just becomes synchronistic. We talked about that, remember, after the recording last week, when we talked about the awe and the flow, and you were talking about the dragonfly,
Yeah.
and it just turned up, and you went, oh, you wouldn't believe, and I'm going, yeah, you called, I came. And that's really how life is meant to be. But we've been conditioned into this need to struggle and this reward system. If you do as you're told, you'll get a reward. Look at what they're doing with people now. If you do what we're told and you go and stand in the queue to be whatever, you know, having this whatever so-called medication for this so-called whatever, then well, look, some people are giving you lollipops, some people are giving you free something or other. I mean, if this was really somebody who cared about your health, who was in tune with the Creator, would they need to bribe you to do this? You know, the whole thing is so skew with and so out of alignment with nature itself. That is what the purpose is. You always say everything has a function, function with purpose. Well, this function with purpose is for us to recognize who we are and to take back that sovereignty, to come back to the indigenous, authentic self within. And that is where the new earth lives. As I said yesterday in my post, the new earth isn't something that we have to create. The earth is becoming renewed. And if we do not go with it, we will never experience that beautiful transition.
So beautiful.
It's not waiting for us.
Yeah. What came to mind just before is that many people love or like or have heard about it and ascribed and subscribed to this great notion that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And to me, it seems that liking that sort of one-liner material is beautiful, but without kind of pulling it apart and what does it actually really constitutes to be a spiritual being having a human experience, because it seems that we're currently being offered this opportunity to really get into the human experience and forget all about our spirituality, get all into the story of everything and into the bifurcation and the separation and the I'm not this and I'm not that and you are not like this. And these simple one-liners that have come forth out of, people feeling into what reality really is, have all of a sudden become a little bit less favored or something, because there's a huge oppressor out there making a lot of noise and getting onto the television, and his media buddies are helping, all of that become distributed, which is all performing a function with purpose. And it's really just kind of like sucking the spirituality out of, because again, what we pay attention to, that media display has zero relationship to spirituality. It has zero relationship to anything natural, as you say. It's very intriguing for me to see that it's so easy to fall into story and not actually go to the essence of spiritual teachings. It's not about that we're having a human experience. Yeah, sure, we're having a human experience, but the first part of the sentence is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So what about that spiritual component? What about our innate spiritual connection that we are part of, and the communication that on a daily basis we can attune ourselves to and be in relationship with both the grandfather sky and the grandmother earth as a indigenous understanding and understanding of relationship with life. These archetypes weren't just created because it just felt really nice to call the sky grandfather and the earth grandmother. This is oral traditions of, well, how we would maybe see it in the Western world from a Western perspective, deeply connected spiritual people. And so it's all about that restoration of that spiritual connection, which is, we are spiritual beings. So that's a statement of isness. That's our nature having a human experience. And so I feel that the invitation moving forward, and also in relating to what is really happening on that spiritual plane with the mother, that is having a transformative occurrence ongoing, and what is it calling from us to remember, and how can we marry, because I feel personally that is the art. It's just like, I'm not telling people stop being a human being and identifying with your human experience, but bring forth and call forth that spiritualized nature that is who we are, and allow that to take maybe a little bit of a bigger seat at the table of the current series of affairs in our own being. And this is something that you, of course, have done for, gosh, I can't even, there's no point putting a time frame on it. But you do that. You call in that, all right, I'm here. I'm here for work. I'm here on commission, and you show up for that. I'm just wanting to explore that a bit more as to how we can all meditate, we can all attune with Mother Earth in a meditative space. How does that then still translate in the rest of our day? Because if it's just an hour of meditation and then we put on the fear porn, one way or the other, by means of going onto Facebook or any other places where we can get information, how mindful are we, and how conscious are we really making use of this time? And what is this calling that is presenting itself as an opportunity right now?
Well, I'm going to shatter a lot of people's beliefs about me, but I don't meditate. Um, I used to when I first, because it was an essential part of the toolbox to stop that letterbox, right? To somehow find a peaceful place. But I no longer need to do that. I sit in stillness. I like to do that and just tune into the atmosphere and the earth. I kind of feel the earth breathing. Um, and I don't take my shoes and socks off and walk in the grass, but there isn't really any here to do that. But I spend a lot of time in nature as part of that. But I want to get back to you saying, this, I'm a spiritual in a human, whatever. I can't even say it anymore because these words get hijacked.
Mm.
Right. So spirituality used to be something that I think for me meant that I was an expression of God consciousness. And I don't use that word either because again it has been hijacked and used for agendas that are not in its true sense for me. So, so how I see, we did a conversation not long ago about what do you love about being human, and you just said that people are now really trapped in being human more than being spiritual. Well, I don't think that's true as I see it, because we've forgotten how to be human. I think that true humanity is pure love, pure caring and sharing, and and being in joy, celebrating each other. That's the true humanity that lives within us. This kindness for life itself. What has happened is that so I guess what I've found and why I don't meditate is because the human part of me and what we are calling the spiritual part of me are one and the same thing. They're not separate. So how I can explain that is that I have become a conscious energy being. Again, I changed the language because I believe once more that the word spiritual has been hijacked. It has been diminished. It has lost its true sense. So then I find something that might explain it a bit better. And for me, I am an energy being. The life force in me is who was before and who will be after. So once I'm in tune with that, and so when I look out in the world outside, I no longer see good, bad, black, white, up, down. I don't see that. I just feel energy, and that energy then is filtered through, and it either is in resonance or it is not in resonance, and that does away with having to have a story about it. I don't have those stories about it. So I feel people and I feel situations. And if they're not in resonance with the life force that is me, then I don't give it attention. And you talked about before, this law of attraction of what you pay attention to is what you draw to you, with however that is now voiced. For me, what you pay attention to, you fuel. So wherever I place my energy, I am fueling. So by putting my energy on what I don't want, I'm slowing down what I do want to come in. Do you know what I'm saying? It's that, and that is what made me turn off everything that is not in alignment with where I'm being called into this ascension process, this transition into the new phase of humanity. And I really want to come to that for a moment, because we started all this off with the indigenous, but one thing that the indigenous are very aware of is that we are on a trajectory with the earth, and we are not going to be staying the same. They know that humanity is evolving or changing, whatever you want to say, find a word for it, into a new phase of itself. As where, due to our programming, we have been made so frightened of change. I love change. I think it's exciting. Who wants to be in the same place all the time? I get bored really easily. So, and one thing I can tell you, that this journey, when you really commit to it, this soul's journey, never boring. You never know what happens from one moment to the next. And as long as you can allow yourself to stay in the flow and discern, is this appropriate for keeping my energy, in resonance, then it just becomes a magical world. But the rest of the world is still worried about, I don't know what they're worried about. They're worried about getting fined. People are doing the most awful things to their bodies because if they don't, they might get fined. I'm not seeing my grandchildren because I might get fined. So you're telling me that a little bit of money is stopping you from living your life? I don't get it. I don't get it because I don't live there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once upon a time, I'm sure I would have got it. So I'm not making it wrong. I'm alerting people to look at their life and really ask some serious question. What does my life mean to me? This is the age-old question, the meaning of life. And I see people just chuck it away for the most bizarre things.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts me because I'm connected to the human spirit. And the spirit of humanity is one of kindness and gentleness and oneness and connected to the prime creator.
Yeah.
And we've lost that. And the prime creator is the part of the mother, and you call the grandmother. I'm a bit older, so I can call it the mother and the father. And we are there as conduits, as we're here to have joy, to share, to expand, to ascend.
Mm.
But we can't do that while we're concerned about somebody giving us a fine and somebody giving us something that might make us ill. What is making us ill is the stories in our heads. And what makes us ill is the disconnect. The disconnect from nature, from our natural self, from the mother, and from knowing who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting field that when I was much earlier in my exploration of the retrieval of my own original innocence, and I got guided on all sorts of very, what I would at that time call, spiritual journeys. But I found that world that I navigated that didn't have anything to do with the billboard society and the stoplights and the stop signs and the turn here and the don't drive in here and the da 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 da. I was actually learning how to look beyond that reality, and I actually trained myself because I was on the road a lot, every week driving to many farms, and I was actually training my brain to see if it could delete the billboards, because it's so easy in this Western world to see all the eye-catching square, shaped, rectangular shaped, red lines and white and bright yellow signs. It's so easy to see that, and then it seems to be so hard to see nature. And so, for instance, if there was a billboard here in the backyard, you'd be surprised how much attention would go towards reading what's on the sign. And that's been something for me that I've really kind of had to bring myself back to in terms of this natural world, and starting to really, after I managed to delete some billboards and I no longer really got caught by them, to actually then start focusing as, all right, I did that, but so then what do I do? Okay, well, now I probably benefit putting my attention and focus on the admiring of the beauty that I witness in nature. And so I remember a story in a place where I would have to take a turn to the left. And almost every week there would be one of these guys with one of those little radar guns, those little, dressed up in a suit, would be standing behind that particular tree. And so I obviously formed a story about, got to watch out of that tree, because, I'm not one to keep rules, and I'm certainly not one to, drive according to whatever the sign says. And it took me probably about 3 weeks. And then one day I just decided, you know what, stuff it. I'm going to pull my truck over to the side of the road, and I'm going to just sit here until I can definitely admire the beauty of this tree, and it was a massive mango tree. And it didn't take me long. I didn't actually have to get out of my car. I was just sitting out there and looking out my window and just really taking in what life is. And I was cultivating appreciation for natural beauty within myself, and I benefited. This isn't a tree that was all of a sudden like, oh, finally I feel seen by a human. No, it was me that was just bringing myself back into the natural order. It was me who was bringing myself back out of this, oh, is the guy there? Whatever story the mind had got, you know, injected with, really. I brought myself back into that natural space of relating. And I was benefiting from that, because then I was like, and I went on my merry way, and all of a sudden it wasn't so difficult to just, you know, drive 100 kilometers an hour as opposed to 110, because, you know, they're not going to catch me. I brought myself totally into a space of contentment and resonance on a biological level, where I could really sense the difference in how I was seeing the world, how I was therefore experiencing the world. And what I learned to do more and more over the years after is to let life inform me. Instead of me saying, oh, there's a coconut tree, and there's a little house, and there's a banana tree, and and box, label. I found myself walking around with what I call a label gun. And it'd be like this super fast, you know, shooting stickers on everything so that I could categorize it and create a frame around it. And I really had to train myself, just like with getting out of the prioritization of watching signs and billboards and all that paraphernalia, to opening myself up again, returning to a place of willful openness for nature to inform me. And I've experienced some rather vulnerable moments with that, because what I realized in the process of allowing nature to share her story, her what is alive and being navigated right here behind me, if I sit with that for long enough and I allow that in, and I allow the story to come, and I allow my cells to open up beyond my own narratives, I feel moved, and I feel sometimes a little bit emotional, because what I get confronted with is how long I haven't done that for, how unavailable I actually was as a spiritual being having a human experience, how engaged I was in the human experience of my own projection stories and narratives and busyness. And it's that taking that time to come home to self, and self in that place is always open. It always wants to play with nature. It always wants to be in the direct experience of the magic and the mystery. And I feel that doing that just in my own backyard is something that I do too little of. And at the same time, I've also realized that that judgment on myself is almost a bit of an additional story that I tell myself. Because when I really tune in where that story comes from, it comes from the same paraphernalia factory that's trying to keep me out of connection. Because the reality is, I am never not in connection. I am never not part of the mother. I'm never not part of nature, and I'm never not part of life. That is happening all the time. And it's as simple as what I drink, what I breathe, what I take into my eyes, what I eat. And so there's different layers for myself that I'm starting to recognize, is that one of the elements that humans may do when they because I don't like to talk about people, needing to get back into connection with nature. It's just maybe we should just stop shaming ourselves that we are actually part of nature, um, that is happening by default, and that the only thing that we really maybe benefit turning down is the paraphernalia, and our nature will just do the rest. It's not that we have to create a time to connect with the earth and have this like mindful frame of like, oh yeah, I better do my meditation so that I can retain my connection with nature. If we get out of all of those stories, we simply are nature. We are connected. And that's what I learned from my indigenous upbringing, is that try to not quieten down this mind, but just lean back into who you really are. Allow all of that just to be what it is, and just lean back into the real truth that really exists all the time, doesn't go anywhere, but there is a up-leveling happening. There is a transformation happening. And I'd like you to share some more around that, because the messages you're bringing through about the new earth are all gentle reminders towards what's happening with the earth and for us as humanity.
Well, as you were talking, several things were coming up. First of all, I think for me, what has occurred in the transition is the return to a humility of being a part of something so much more. And we have been so programmed to go out and take from Mother Earth for our own benefit. And what that has caused is the lack of awareness of what she will give quite unconditionally and so generously all the time. When we're not abusing her and we're not, raping her, which is what has been happening, when we walk out there and as a part of her, when we can feel her breathing, when we become one with the flora and the fauna, when we talk to the birds, when we talk to the plants, when we talk to the soil, when we talk to each other, which is something that is now being stopped. People are afraid to talk to one another. Yeah. All this separation, all this taking away from. So once we change that mindset from, I don't need to go out and take anything. If I just sit with her and if I just become one with her, her generosity is infinite. And that is the transition that we have to go towards, this arrogance of it's all mine, it's all mine, it's all mine, is, to me, it just stuns me how it is becoming so terrifying for people to have to give up their trinkets, as you say. And yet, on the other side, one of the things that I've noticed with all the being put in jail stuff, on a naughty chair, as I call it, is that everybody's gone and decided that how much less they can live with, and have been emptying their drawers and their cupboards and then goodness knows what, and chucking out, because, yes, all this collecting of trinkets just takes maintenance. It means you have to go out and pay for it, which means that you are spending far more time at a job when you could be out sitting and listening to the birds, right? But all to maintain and supply. When Mother will supply everything you need, when you stop chasing. I just have this real sense of well-being because I'm not chasing. And the less chasing I'm doing, the busier I seem to be getting, the more in demand, my writings are becoming, and I'm like, okay, because I'm not chasing anything, because I know that all my needs will be met as long as I stay connected consciously.
Mm-hmm.
It is that word. That word is everything. We have become these robotic, unconscious, reactionary doers that has taken us away from the responsive, self-aware beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the journey, what you call the hero's journey, is to reestablish that, to remember that, to be fueled by the Force. I loved Star Wars. I think Star Wars were fabulous. And my favorite scene was when Obi-Wan Kenobi stands there and makes the bad guys speak the words that he wants them to speak for him. And I've practiced it and it works. So, it is when we align with each other. It's this, what you and I've talked about, this symbiotic dance of nature within each one of us, with the understanding that, and I think that's what I'm supposed to be writing about today. There was the soul's journey is this understanding that source has sent out all these sparks of life and electromagnetic impulses into life, as trees, as flowers, as birds, as cats and dogs, whatever, as humans. So it has individuated itself, love that word, for the purpose of having as many experiences of itself as it can.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it all comes from the same father, mother, whatever you want to call that, the quantum field of consciousness that is all that is. So as much as we are separate, individuated sparks of reality, as we see it, we are all connected from the same source.
Mm-hmm.
It's like siblings, right? Totally different. And sometimes you wonder how the hell they came from the same parents, because they're there to have a different experience. And I think we've lost the big picture. We've lost the whole connection to life itself. We're so busy accumulating stuff. And then underlying all of that is, of course, the falseness that we, right from birth, have been told that we must avoid death at all costs. Well, the indigenous don't do that. They know life and death are the same, two sides of the same coin. And it's just a flip of that coin that tells you which side that you're on. So whilst you are alive, live it, but live it from the heart, not from up there, because that is still full of rubbish.
Full of rubbish. Yes.
Full of
Yeah,
rubbish.
that's where the programming resides. That
Yeah.
has been put on top of our innate and natural knowings of what is simply natural, and that's something that I recognize is has been for me some of the most confronting self-reflective work that I've ever done, is to ask myself, is this natural? Is it natural to be thinking these thoughts or expressing myself in this way? And the cells know, nature knows, no, it's not natural. And so, so that's when then I came to my own human damage. Well, because the question is, do you want to keep doing it like that? Well, I don't want to keep doing it like that. Well, and then I discovered that the only way out is in, because by just me saying, well, I really want to get out of this human damage because I really don't want to do it like this anymore, because I'm treating you as less than me, or I'm putting myself over you in the thought frequencies. Even I really want to break these patterns, because what they cause me to be in is separation, segregation. I'm more than you, so I'm defending something that doesn't actually need defending. And I actually had to work out, where does it even come from? Where does this originate? Where does this sit in me? Of course, that's where all the unnatural events and circumstances and imprints can be discovered, and they do want to be retrieved, because there are little children inside of all of our beings in this subconscious, unconscious terrain of our mind. That is where the disassociated aspects of self are just still being able to pull the little reactionary string from, send up a little electrical shock, and that made me in the past think, go rah, 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 rah. And really what that was is just a messenger from within. And so I've done that exploration quite thoroughly, and once those parts are retrieved, the ease and the grace in the neurochemistry, that natural way of being, naturally becomes restored, because it's not like we can re-enable our nature by going and doing and attaining and following the same kind of programmed trajectory of getting somewhere. We do go on these heroes' journeys, but really where the journey takes place is on our internal landscape, where we meet our own demons and we meet our own villains, and the villains are those that we see around, but they are just archetypal representations of what really happened when we were much. Because why is it not what we have already good enough? But I see that there is an opportunity for any of us to come home to self more during this process. But how does that express itself then? Through community. And because we've tapped into that a little bit, and maybe we can just lift the beginning of it up in terms of newer sanctuaries, because we can't do this alone. We can and we can't. And that's because we are individuated, but we are part of a whole. And I feel that the choice point for many people is becoming more like, who do you really want to hang out with? And so, yeah, I just want to welcome you into that exploration around the sanctuaries, because I know that that's something that is really part of what you're bringing through in this world. We're not just sitting here on a screen every week. There is a newer sanctuary in the making. And that's inspiring to me.
I love how, towards the end of the hour, we always segue into what we're going to talk about next week. But I love this New Earth communities, and that's a whole new thing that we can talk about. What has drawn you and I to each other is this same underlying feeling. And what you say, is it relevant? Yes, it's relevant because it's come to you. I have learned to trust what comes to me as something that is next on my soul's journey. Has to be relevant, otherwise it wouldn't bother. And it's not just you and I that are talking this. I mean, it is absolutely around the world. People are looking for land where they can create these hubs of community, where they can begin to live as they would prefer to live to where we're coming out of. And that is the transition that we're looking towards. I know something that you and I have in common with, because I've got a community here and you've got your community, but we are interrelated. And and what I'm noticing is that people have to be taught how to live in a community, not communally. There's a difference. It doesn't mean we all have to live on top of each other and go back to the 60s. None of that. Not that was not good. I don't know. I was like, as I say, I'm a 5-star girl. I always I like my mod cons, so I wasn't really so drawn to that. But what we have forgotten is what the indigenous do so beautifully. They live in a community of caring and sharing. We interact with each other. We make each other welcome. We learn to listen. We also learn to honor the wisdom of the elders. There's so much in the indigenous, the original indigenous culture that is one with nature and one with each other. They don't have this complete separation where we feel, as you said earlier, we have this hierarchy going on. So to create the community, it absolutely thrills me that finally, after having been on this journey for so long as a loner, to be meeting people all around the world who have the same, heart calling, to start to go back to living in communities. Now, we talk about our community as our suburb, but we don't talk to each other. You don't know the name of the next door neighbor. And sometimes you don't want to, right? But it is all about, we have lost the ability to know what community is. And when we live in communities, no one ever does without. I think that's a really big one, because one of the reasons that people are able to be manipulated and controlled is their fear of lack. But if you're in a community that you know that someone will always have your back, it'll create a sense of well-being and safety that we have lost for thousands of years. And I just love this feeling. So these sanctuaries, and let's talk about it next week. These sanctuaries for me are like a nest, a home for people to come to heal their wounds, to sit and just sit. If they want to grow vegetables, they grow vegetables. And if they want to sit and just commune with the trees, they can do that. If they want to listen to the birds, they can do that. If they, if they need to speak to people, they can do that. It is a total different way of bringing people home, to remembering who they are, to reconnecting them to their source, their soul, their land, the mother and the father, and creating heaven on earth right here, right now.
So beautiful.
Can I share this one thing? Because you're talking about nature. And the way that I see humanity, and I've said this before, and I really want to bring it out again. I have, what have I got here? Yes, I've got a tree of life, right? I don't know if you can see my tree of life. Let me hold it like that. So I see humanity like this humongous tree, like the mother tree. And on it, it has just a myriad, well, actually 8 point whatever, how many billions of flowers. But every flower is different. And every flower is either staying in its bud and too scared to open up and be in full bloom, or it trusts its environment and what it is, part of the tree and part of nature, and cannot wait to become all that it possibly could become. And open its heart and walk proud in all its glory.
So beautiful.
Which flower are you?
Yeah. Great question. Well, I'm deciding to stay with the mother and find my path to be in closer communion with her. I encourage anybody to do the same, because in that place there is a natural nourishment and nurturing that encourages that unfolding and that budding of the flower to keep following its own life's expression. So great, Yvonne. Next week we have something lined up around these sanctuaries for sure. And I want to thank you again for being here and sharing, from a lifelong, full of experience and journeying within your own self, doing the inner work. Um, I've probably just had a fast run at it, and been so blessed to have come to where I am. And every week I'm still enjoying the poignant reminders for my own selves and my own work and my own activism, my heart's activism to make this journey really about me and do also what it is that we talk about. So it's great transformative. Its great transformative function is definitely alive in me. So I'm about to head out to a beautiful farm and teach a large group of Balinese students about connection with nature. And they don't have any challenges with that. I must say that the next generation is seeming to be a little bit off, because most of them just, they do this a lot. But thank you for another great hour, and we will be back again next week.
Maybe a better time.
Maybe a better time. Yay. Nice. So beautiful. Thank you.
It is what it is. Thank you once more. Whatever has brought us together, I think we're making beautiful music.
Beautiful. Love that.
Thank you.